The majority of comments I get on my YouTube videos have to do with ingredient substitutions. I find there's many reasons that people ask for ingredient substitutions, ranging from like they don't have the ingredient handy, it's not available in their country, they have an allergy, they don't like the taste of it, etc. Or sometimes people are just curious as to why I use certain ingredients over others. Hi, if you're new here, I'm Amanda, aka Fit Food AE, and today we're gonna be going over my 10 most commonly questioned ingredients and talking about substitutions for all of them. I'm gonna include a graphic or like a chart that summarizes all the substitutions that I talked about so you can easily reference it. So let's get started, shall we? Number 1, my most commonly questioned ingredient is xanthan gum. It's used as a thickening agent in my Ninja Creamy recipes. I only started using it like a little over a year ago. It's made a huge difference. Basically, it helps to bind the ice cream and make it more thick and blended and less icy. So just make it like thick, creamier, and just like better quality overall. I get mine from Amazon and I only use like 1 gram or less in all of my Ninja Creamy recipes. So if you don't have xanthan gum available, I would recommend using guar gum. This was recommended to me by a lot of people in my comments, my followers, saying that guar gum actually works better. I just have like this big bag of xanthan gum that I'm yet to use, so I'm just going through it. It's been working for me. If you don't have access to either of these things, then you can use 5 grams of fat-free pudding mix. You'll see that in all my recipes, my Ninja Creamy recipes, I use the pudding mix and the xanthan gum. I'm mainly just using the pudding mix for flavor. I personally don't find that the pudding mix is the best substitution for xanthan gum. I just find that it doesn't blend as well. But if you look at my previous recipes, a lot of them don't use xanthan gum and I just use the pudding mix. So again, it does work, but if you can get your hands on xanthan gum or guar gum, I would highly recommend that. Playing off of that, the second most commonly questioned ingredient is pudding mix. So apparently pudding mix is like not available in the UK at all. That's what I've been told. So again, I use pudding mix in not just my Ninja Creamy recipes, but I use it in my cheesecake bowls, my cupcake recipes, etc. So for the cupcake recipes, it makes them more moist, and for the cheesecake bowls, it makes them more thick and just also adds flavor. So again, I love pudding mix. I think it's a great ingredient, but obviously certain countries don't have it. So things that you can use instead: instant custard powder. This is apparently available in the UK. If it's not, let me know, but you could definitely try this. Or if you just need it as like a thickening agent, you could use a tablespoon of cornstarch combined with a teaspoon of sweetener like monk fruit. So just mix that together and then add that in place of the pudding mix. This should help with like thickening of the Ninja Creamy, the cheesecake bowl, etc. Number 3 is monk fruit. So a lot of people question monk fruit, or they're like, can I use a different sweetener? So I always use either Lakanto or Swerve monk fruit sweetener. I've talked about this in previous videos. I used to be an affiliate with Lakanto, but they like stopped their affiliate program. So now I use Swerve. Basically, monk fruit is a 1-to-1 substitute for sugar, but it has 0 calories. So that's ideal for the kind of recipes that I make. Monk fruit tends to be better than stevia because stevia has a little bit of an aftertaste and it's actually sweeter than monk fruit. So what I would recommend is to use monk fruit for baking, and then if you're trying to make like 0-calorie drinks or use like smaller amounts of sweetener, then stevia is totally fine. But if you don't have monk fruit available, then you can use stevia for baking. Like, you definitely can. I would recommend just using a bit less. I'll put the ratio of like monk fruit to stevia on the screen because again, stevia isn't a 1-to-1 substitute for sugar, whereas monk fruit is. If you don't care about the calories, you could also just like sub regular sugar. But if you're watching this video and you're watching my channel, you probably do. Number 4 are like the different types of monk fruit. So a lot of people ask like, what's the difference between the white monk fruit, the brown one, the powdered one? Can I interchange them, etc.? So basically, the regular white classic monk fruit is a substitute for white sugar, and the brown monk fruit is a substitute for brown sugar. So think like cookies, coffee cake, that's what I like to use the brown monk fruit in. It has like a caramel kind of undertone. But if you don't have it, you can just use white sugar. Like, you could definitely make cookies and stuff with white sugar. Honestly, it tastes relatively the same. So if you don't have that handy, feel free to use white sugar. Of course, you could also use regular brown sugar if you don't care about the calories. So powdered monk fruit is a little bit different, right? So powdered monk fruit is a substitute for powdered sugar, which powdered sugar is obviously super high in calories. I have a lot of people ask if they could just use regular powdered sugar. Yeah, of course you can, but both Lakanto and Swerve make perfectly good 0-calorie powdered sugars. You could get these on Amazon. You could also get them in most grocery stores, at least Swerve, you can get it in Canada. Let's say you're making like cupcake or cake frosting though, and you don't have powdered monk fruit available. You can just mix protein powder and non-fat Greek yogurt and then just add a different kind of sweetener, like add some brown monk fruit or white monk fruit into there. You could even also add a bit of pudding mix if you want to add more flavor, but yeah, the powdered monk fruit just makes it a bit more like frosting, like kind of the buttercream frosting you'd get, but you could definitely make a totally viable frosting without it. Number 5 are the different types of flour. So I get a lot of questions on like, can I substitute all-purpose flour for coconut flour? Can I substitute almond flour for coconut flour, etc.? Not all flours are made equal, guys. So you can't just like substitute one for the other, one for one, unfortunately. So all-purpose flour is used for like traditional baking, like cakes, cupcakes, cookies, muffins, etc. All-purpose flour has a 4-to-1 ratio with coconut flour, meaning that if you didn't have coconut flour handy, let's say my recipe called for 10 grams of coconut flour, you would need to sub it with 40 grams of all-purpose flour. This is because coconut flour is way more absorbent, so it absorbs liquid way easier than all-purpose flour. Coconut flour is low in carbs, it's gluten-free. I basically use it in recipes, usually in combination with all-purpose flour to keep the calories lower. But yeah, again, if you don't have access to coconut flour, it's sold in most grocery stores, but if you don't have it, you could just substitute 4 times the amount of all-purpose flour. So oat flour is just ground up oats. I don't even buy oat flour, I just grind up quick oats in a blender. I use this in recipes such as like my no-bake cookie dough because oat flour doesn't need to be heat treated, so I'll use them in recipes that don't require baking. In recipes that do require baking, I find that oat flour can typically be substituted with all-purpose flour 1-to-1, just not if you're making like a loaf of bread or something like that that requires gluten, because obviously oat flour is gluten-free, but if you're making like a soft baked good, it should be fine. The only thing is that oat flour is a little bit more absorbent than all-purpose flour, so you might have to add a little bit more liquid if you're using oat flour instead of all-purpose. If a flour is more absorbent, that means it like soaks up more liquid. So the reason you have to add more liquid is so you don't get like a drier or more crumbly result. Okay, almond flour. I've never used almond flour in any of my recipes, but I get a lot of comments of like, can I use almond flour instead of XYZ? Almond flour is similar to coconut flour. It's not like the same, but if you don't have coconut flour available but you have almond flour, you can substitute it in place of it because it's similar to coconut flour, but it's less absorbent. So if you're using almond flour instead of coconut flour, use less liquid since it's less absorbent. So protein powder, you guys know where I stand with this one. I obviously use PE Science protein in every single one of my recipes. It's a whey casein blend. I actually asked ChatGPT, I'm like, what is the best protein powder for baking? And it said PE Science is the best because it's a whey casein blend. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, ChatGPT knows me, so maybe I'm biased, but by the way, if you do want to purchase from PE Science, please use my discount code FIT15 or there's going to be a link in the description. If you don't have access to PE Science, use any other whey casein blend. I know Quest makes one or like maybe used to make one. If you don't have access to a whey casein blend, then your best bet is just to use whey protein powder. Most of my recipes should work with whey. A lot of people in my comments don't use PE Science and they use whey and they say that it works just fine. When it comes to vegan protein powder though, I like pea protein powder, I haven't had much luck baking with that. And I don't really like the taste of it. If you are gonna buy vegan protein powder, PE Science does make one and it tastes great in oatmeal. I just don't really enjoy using it for baking. Okay, number 7, protein powder versus no protein powder. Obviously, I have a lot of people in my comments being like, can I make this without protein powder? So I decided to make a bunch of recipes without protein powder because the thing is, if you just substitute the protein powder for all-purpose flour, which you technically can do, it's just not gonna taste as good because protein powder adds sweetness. So again, let's say my chocolate chip cookie recipes with chocolate protein powder, you're only gonna be getting the sweetness from the monk fruit sweetener. So you can just like increase the amount of monk fruit sweetener, like maybe times it by 1.5, but it's just not gonna taste as good as chocolatey. So that's why I made a bunch of recipes like cookies, muffins, etc. without protein powder. With these recipes, I changed up the ingredients and like added certain ingredients like maple syrup, whatever, in order to make the taste great, but without protein powder and make sure the macros are like up to par. So rather than taking my recipes that have protein powder and just like omitting the protein powder or replacing it with flour, I'd recommend just looking at the recipes I've made that don't have protein powder. Number 8, types of milk. So like almond milk versus Fairlife versus regular 2% milk. So Fairlife milk is higher in protein than regular 2% milk, and it delivers like a creamy texture in Ninja Creamy recipes. I absolutely love it. It's also lactose free. So it's a great option to use in my recipes, especially Ninja Creamy ones. It's only 80 calories per cup. You'll often see in my Ninja Creamy recipes, I use a combination of the Fairlife milk and the unsweetened almond milk, and that's just to keep the calories lower while still getting a really good, like creamy, well-textured result. Almond milk is obviously a lot lower in calories because it's predominantly water. So if you use just this in a Ninja Creamy recipe and not any sort of like milk, it's like dairy milk, like the Fairlife regular milk, you're probably gonna get like an icy result. It's just not gonna taste good. But if you don't have access to Fairlife milk, I'd recommend using any other like high protein milk. Nelson Dairyland, I've worked with them before. They make a great high protein milk, or just use regular 2% milk. Number 9, light margarine versus regular margarine versus butter versus unsweetened applesauce. So light margarine has less calories, obviously, than regular margarine or butter, which is why I use it in recipes. It works really well in like cookie or brownie recipes. Regular butter obviously would work better, but it's just too high in calories to use to make macro-friendly recipes. So unsweetened applesauce is technically a substitute for butter or like light butter. And a lot of people ask me why I don't just use that as opposed to light butter, because light butter is still, you know, it's still like 35 calories for every 10 grams, something like that. And obviously unsweetened applesauce is much lower. If you use just unsweetened applesauce in recipes such as cookies, they're just gonna turn out really spongy. So that's why I kind of use like a combination, or I just use light margarine. If you really, really wanna keep the calories low and you don't care about cookies being spongy, then you could definitely use unsweetened applesauce instead, or a combination. Also, if you don't have access to light margarine, just use regular margarine or regular butter. The brand I use is Baysell. And number 10, playing off of that, unsweetened applesauce versus pure pumpkin versus mashed banana. So sometimes I get comments like, I don't like applesauce, or I don't have unsweetened applesauce, what do I use? There are a lot of different substitutes. Typically the best one is mashed banana, especially if it's a baked good, because mashed banana and unsweetened applesauce, they both have like not a very strong taste, and they're both like lower in calories, so they're great to use as a substitute. You could also use pumpkin puree. Just keep in mind this might add a little bit of an orange tint to your recipe, but again, it doesn't really have much of a taste and it's low in calories, so I use it a lot. Another thing you could use is mashed avocado. This might add a bit of like an earthy taste though, might add a little bit of a green tint, and it's also a bit higher in calories, but again, it is a decent substitute. In my opinion, I would just use mashed banana if you don't want to use applesauce. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then I'm sure you're looking to bake something, so I'll link another recipe video here that you should watch next. And please be sure to give this video a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends, as it really helps the channel, and I post new videos every week. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Bye.